Welcome to Everett Public School Board of Directors regular meeting. It is February 6, 2018. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the Secretary please call the roll?
President Mason.
Present.
Vice President Andrews. Director Lassane.
Present.
Director Mitchell.
Present.
Director Wenta.
Present.
Student Representative Parikh.
Present.
Student Representative Polak.
Thank you. And with that, we move to section 4.0, adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, may you please introduce tonight's agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Tonight, consistent with the plans established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, the agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There's a segment this evening for routine business, a segment for board comments, a segment for superintendent's report, one for strategic progress reporting, one for information items, a segment for new business, and one for upcoming agenda items. Following changes were made to agenda items since publishing the agenda to you. Item 7.8, appointment of board representative to the Student Representative Selection Committee, was revised to include the board president's selection for the committee, Director Lassane as the appointee. Item 8.1, the superintendent's report will be updated during the meeting as is customary for regular meetings. Item 11.2, budget development update, was revised to include an updated presentation for this evening's meeting, although that was not included when the item was published yesterday morning. The board may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. Please note this is not the point in your agenda to request items be removed from the consent agenda. In all other respects, the agenda is as we published it to you, and we ask your approval thereof.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Wenta and seconded by Director Lassane to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. That takes us to section 5.0, recognition, and this evening there are no recognitions, so we will move on to section 6.0, public comment. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public in its meetings. Dr. Cohn, are there any requests for comments this evening?
Yes, there is.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome you to this meeting. School board meetings are designed to conduct district business in public. We welcome ideas and opinions presented in the same spirit. I would like to share how this portion of the meeting is conducted. 1, the superintendent will call you to the podium to speak in order which you signed up tonight. Each speaker has 3 minutes. All comments are recorded and will be made available for future viewing by the board and the public. The public comments part of the agenda is for the board to listen to what you have to say. It is not for debate or discussion. Board members do not respond to individual comments. As board president, I have the responsibility to ensure the meeting and all conversations are orderly, productive, and respectful. Thank you for helping me with this responsibility. Dr. Cohn.
I'd like to call John Van Dalen to the lectern. The green light will signify the start of your 3 minutes. The yellow will signify a 30-second warning, and the red, the expiration of your time.
Where? Oh. Good afternoon. My name is John Van Dalen. I live at 1316 Hoyt, Everett Avenue, or Everett. And I'm here to speak about the upcoming election Tuesday. At this point, my wife and I will be voting no on both issues. Bear in mind that my daughters, my wife, and myself were educated by the Everett School District. We don't take this very lightly. Our reason for vetoing the levy is very simple. The fiscal outlook 2017 to 2022 Board of Directors meeting Finance and Business Services of November 7th, 2017, and the budget development of number 1 and 2 PowerPoints are now out of date, as is the little flyer out in the front. That's 2016, and need to be updated now that the legislature new school funding budget is in hand. I hope there is still no fiscal cliff looming. We think that because of the new state funding plan enacted by the legislature, that the levy funding will need to be recalculated, and that then we can vote on it again. We want to see what the windfall to the school district is. What is the new amount that the citizens will be paying towards the 2 levies? The operational and maintenance budgets are small on facts, long on dollars. The district dream for more schools, acquiring more property, tearing down old buildings with historical value, upgrading other facilities and equipment. But as an operational and maintenance person, there should be more information and a better representation of the true cost of each project. We may be exaggerating our thoughts, but at the time, we need to see our 2018-2019 tax bill from Snohomish County to see what the level of funding for school will be. It is prudent to wait for the school district to recalculate the special and the operational maintenance budgets. We think we will be double dinged if both the legislature school funding increases and the levies cause too much tax to be levied to the citizens of the school district. Should the levy pass, my question is, how will the district refund the windfall to the voters? And lastly, I'll leave that one alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking a minute to share your thoughts, and I encourage you to look on the district website for additional information on both funding measures, the bond and the levy.
The last couple of days? I just looked at it earlier this week.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any additional public comments?
There are none.
Okay, that takes us to section 7.0, the consent agenda. Will you please introduce tonight's consent agenda?
The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items, for example, meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently, but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, that item is placed in new business, and the remaining items are automatically renumbered by the system. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion, and by its definition and nature, consent agendas are not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding these items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented as published for your approval.
Thank you. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
So moved.
There a second? Second. Director Lassane has moved to adopt the consent agenda, and Director Mitchell has seconded. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Which takes us to section 8.0, board comments. This is a time where directors and student representatives have an opportunity to share information or comments about their activities as they relate to the district. Director Mitchell, would you like to start us this evening?
Certainly, thank you. My first one actually doesn't have anything to do with the district, but I think it would help the district. When I missed our meeting 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of seeing a woman named Caroline Casey speak. She is blind. She is phenomenal. And I believe she has a TED Talk out there that I think would be great for staff development, because she really does show what people with disabilities can do. And she actually has a campaign that I'm not endorsing or promoting called the 1 Billion People with Disabilities. And she's out there raising money and trying to get companies to hire people with disabilities. But she's absolutely phenomenal, and I think it'd be good for people to see her. My second thing is that I had the pleasure of being at the Penny Creek meeting, and it would have been nice if our previous gentleman had the chance to hear that presentation, as well as more community members. That it was a pretty big room. I believe that Dr. Stewart, you did a phenomenal job, really showing the benefit of a diploma, as well as what we do for kids post graduation, and why it is so important what we're doing here. And the fact that you did stress, we are not perfect. And I think that is something that we all have to realize, that we're all doing the best we can with what we have, with what we come with. And that I think for this district, the best we can is absolutely exceptional. Which I'm very proud of, and had the pleasure of meeting some people one-on-one. One young parent that has a kindergartner at Penny Creek wondering where the high school boundaries are going to be, and then another younger man who has 2 kids that aren't even in kindergarten yet, but wondering about the overcrowding and how he could help. So that was really interesting. My last thing is all healthcare providers in Washington State are required for their licensure this year to receive suicide training. So I went to mine, and they're doing this because we do see, I don't anymore, but pharmacists, physicians, nurses do see people at their weakest. And that there was identified at the state legislature an opportunity for us to intervene. And it was just really, really interesting what I learned. And I think that for our students that struggle here, the staff that might need resources, just that there is lots of things going on in the state to really, really help people at risk. 44,000 people nationally commit suicide, but almost 1 million attempt it. So that's, big numbers nationally, but I think it's just good what we do here and then what's being done in the community. So thank you.
Thank you. I have no comments this evening. Director Lassane?
Yes, I had the opportunity to attend several State of the School reviews at Cascade High School, Jefferson, Woodside, and Silver Firs Elementary. And I can say I am just blown away with the support and the enthusiasm, I would say, teachers and administrators have at their schools. And they are so, I guess you would say, dedicated and motivated to working for each of our students. So I'm very much blown away by all that I have been seeing. So way to go. I also had the opportunity of attending the WASA and WASBO Legislative Council conference this past week with 4 of our students from Cascade, from Everett, and from Jackson High School. And our student rep was in attendance. And so was my colleague, Director Wenta. And yes, indeed. And I enjoy that conference. It is a good opportunity for me to get some professional development and listen to what the legislators are doing, but also how our different societies, WASDA, WASBO, and WASA, are advocating to our legislators the need for greater support in our schools so that our students have what they need. So I look at that as an opportunity to get professional development, as well as an opportunity to talk to our legislators to see how we can better help them in getting the information that they need in order to turn around to support our community. And I must say that our students, they were fantastic. You guys did a wonderful job. You guys spoke on all of the issues that were our priorities here, so you did an outstanding job. Thank you so very much. I also had an opportunity to attend the Snohomish STEM Symposium, and I know we're going to be hearing more about that at our next special meeting next week. So I'm looking forward to STEM and what we're doing here. I do realize that a lot of our students are going, once they finish here, a lot of them stay right here in the area. And we really do have to prepare them for those challenges at the colleges and universities in the area, as well as for career opportunities here in the area. Enough said, we'll be hearing more about that, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks. I'm also very proud of our students that attended, one of our students attended the conference, legislative conference, but she was able to step out of her comfort zone, and she actually put a letter into the paper today to talk about, so eloquently, to talk about from her perspective as a student, how the overcrowding situations affect students at Jackson High School. And she did a wonderful job. If she were here, we should recognize her. And she also talked about the growth and the need for a new high school. So I am very happy about the work that she is doing and how she stepped up to the plate to do that. And she had the opportunity to register to vote while we were down in Olympia. So that is a positive move. I'm also very happy to see that our schools were very much in the paper. Jackson, as I mentioned in the editorial page, Cascade High School cheerleaders captured the state championship, and also Everett boys basketball team is headed back to the postseason, thanks in large parts to the play of its 4 core seniors. So we are doing some great work in our community. Our community is recognizing us, and our kids are getting the uplift that they need. So thank you all for supporting our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lassane. I had the opportunity to attend 3 saucers, one at Whittier, one at North Middle School, and then yesterday at Woodside Elementary. One of the takeaways that I hadn't seen in a saucer prior to the one at Whittier was the nurse intake information. And I think that was a surprise for all of us who were sitting in the room when it comes from a social and emotional learning standpoint. And that as they tracked a lot of the students that were going into the nursing office, there were some of the same students who had some other challenges in other situations. And you know, I see it as an opportunity for a board learning session. I just thought it was an interesting way to look at the data. I would echo Director Lassane's comments on the WASDA conference, and I thought Druvik did a wonderful job preparing the students. He was the wise sage amongst our student body leaders as far as prepping them and getting them ready. And I thought Gabby's article in the paper captured really what she said to legislators. So she did a wonderful, wonderful job. And then finally, Director Andrews and myself had the opportunity to attend the audit entrance conference last week, and we should be hearing more about that in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So.
Okay. So just to echo some of the thoughts that were already shared, I really found the legislative conference very educational and enjoyable. Not just the meetings that we had with the legislators, but the conference with WASDA, WASA, and WASBO, and hearing those speakers, and also a meeting with the Secretary of State, and also an unexpected meeting with Justice Gonzalez, which is also a lot of fun. And the other thing is with the bond and levy coming up, the last few weeks I've been getting a lot of people coming up to me asking me, you know, what's going on, what's a bond, what's a levy, what's the difference, and why are we having these on the ballot? And that even led to a conversation that took up the entire period in our AP government class about why the school district needs to go out and do these things in addition to the funding that it gets from the state. And so that I think was especially fun because as seniors, a lot of these students are actually going to be voting for the first time in this election. And so, it's a good sign.
Excellent. I'm curious, did you get questions from adults as well as students, or mostly just students?
Actually, it was mostly adults. Some of my neighbors or my family friends who were curious about their thoughts or my thoughts on what we're doing. But also, I've been trying to just tell the students, especially those who have already turned 18, to go out and vote.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your advocacy. Appreciate it. Okay, that takes us to section 9.0, Superintendent Report. Dr. Cohn, please share your news.
Okay, thank you very much.
Celebrations and news.
A few of those and a couple of updates and things of that nature. I think the first thing that I'd like to show you is really very beautiful. Yes, this is Heatherwood Middle School's entryway. The staff at Heatherwood has been doing a lot of work to brighten the entryway to the school and change the what you see when you walk into the school. The next time you visit, look up when you go in. This is a display of world flags, and you can see the brilliance of the colors. They installed this in the hallway to support the school's increasingly diverse population and in anticipation of Heatherwood's second annual Multicultural Night, which is a partnership between the school and its PTA. Well, I think we want to make sure that we remind you and everybody else that our graduation rates continue to climb. This is the most recent information that's been verified by our state superintendent's office, and we have therefore been able to gather the information about Snohomish County's rates and about Washington's rates. The English language learner grad rates continue to rise as well, and I am told that we've got the highest rate of any district with 10 or more students in the program, which I think is really great news. We'd also like to congratulate our latest proud Sequoia High School graduate, Riley Robbins, who just completed her diploma. So that's all kinds of fun. I thought you'd enjoy that. Should I just skip this part? Yeah, kind of.
Stole your thunder?
Pretty much, yeah. So here's a little bit of information about our cheer squad from Cascade High School, the 2017-18 WIAA 4A non-tumbling co-ed state champions. We wish them luck as they compete in the national championships in Las Vegas on the 23rd and 24th of the month. In addition, Cascade High School girls bowling team finished 5th place in the 4A state championship last week in Tacoma, and Jackson High School girls bowling team also scored at the championships, with athletes finishing in the 20th, 22nd, and 34th places. So, good news for some youngsters who are participating in bowling, and for our co-ed cheerleading champs. I had the opportunity to spend some time at the, I think it's regional, but it may be district. I'm not sure. I always remember that. Competition among the ROTC units in our area. Last week, Everett High's Siegel Company, actually it's the district's Siegel Company at Everett High School, dominated the drill, as they say, winning first place in the tournament among 7 rival schools. Commander Giles shared that the cadets placed in the top 3 in each of the 10 events and had first place finishes in color guard, exhibition drill, and academics, and took second place finishes in 6 other events. If you had a chance to observe this, you would be so very, very proud of our students and the youngsters from other school districts. I happened to snap a picture of the drill team from Snohomish and sent it to their superintendent, who was a little surprised and really pleased to have a pic of his students performing. They did a very good job, by the way. A little bit of DECA news. Last month, DECA students from Cascade, Everett, and Jackson High Schools participated in the Area 2 Career Development Conference. Of the 103 competitors from our 3 comprehensive high schools, 28 students are advancing to the state Career Development Conference in Bellevue the first week of March. This is an opportunity for youngsters to test themselves against students from all across the state, and for a lot of business people to be involved in not only setting up the events, but in judging the performance of these students. Having done this on a number of occasions in my career, I have to tell you it's one of my favorite parts of the year. And if you get a chance, and if you'd like to go, we'd find a way to get you there and provide you an opportunity to observe what happens. So I'm going to try to speak while this video's playing. I'm going to see if I can make the video play. I may or may not be able to make the video play, but here we go. January 9th was a busy day for Jackson High's Environmental Systems Design class. The video illustrates our hard work in clearing and preparing soil prior to planting approximately 140 native plants in a stormwater area between Jackson and Heatherwood Middle. The video is an example of the career pathways, energy, and sustainability activities planned at High School number 4. Sound Salmon Solutions, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to ensure the future of healthy salmon runs, is documenting the project and following the students' progress and its success. Thanks to the students, the green space is now much more salmon and environmentally friendly. Kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool. Great project. Yeah.
Isn't that fun?
Nice.
Yeah. Those of you who have been here long enough will remember that the butterfly was almost our district's logo, but not quite.
Really?
Yeah, once upon a time.
fierce
Okay,
butterfly.
next slide. In our bond proposal, Cascade High School is slated for a 4,000 square foot addition along with the renovation of its science facility. Portions of the new space would become a high-tech center in which students learn skills for careers in aerospace and advanced manufacturing. In December, Cascade got a head start on the Career Pathway program. They earned a $22,500 aerospace and advanced manufacturing program Core Plus grant. The grant will buy a computer, numerical controlled milling machine. We call them CNC machines. The devices are computer-driven machine shop tools. Once programmed, the machine transforms a piece of material into a product or part. The CNC operator writes the computer program controlling or maneuvering the tools to carve the material into a specific piece. This is a wonderful addition to the program at Cascade. Excuse me. Also would like to note and sort of memorialize, if you will, our trip to the legislative conference. We think we all had a great time. These are some pictures that we took in one case with the governor, and in another case with one of our Supreme Court justices, and then the students, the 4 ASB officers, also were able to get a picture in the governor's mansion. I think you've fairly well covered the excitement of the trip, and I want to thank the students for their hard work and the directors for your hard work as well, getting ready for and delivering the message here from Everett to our legislators and some of the other folks with whom we were able to speak once we were there. The Snohomish STEM Network hosted its first summit. Director Lassane noted that. It was on January 31st at the Hanson Conference Center. There were about 75 participants. Welcoming remarks were provided by Patrick Pierce, who's the CEO of the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County. Congressman Rick Larson addressed the group, and Candace Barnes, who's the director, also spoke. The keynote address was provided by Dr. Janae Myers-Twitchell, who's the impact director at Washington STEM. I'm not sure I've got that right. She's with the University of Washington. She presented a remarkable set of statistics, data, and visuals on what happens with kids after graduation. And in fact, I am so impressed. I heard this presentation at the Washington Alliance for Better Schools that I'm recommending to you that we find some time to have her come present that information to you, and that we invite some of our community members, city council, county council, and some business leaders, because I think the information is not only enlightening, remarkable, and invigorating, but it is precisely aligned with the work that we're doing here in the district and with what you've elected to put on the ballot in the bond in front of voters. So I want to thank Dana Riley Black for the work that she did as well to get that program ready to participate, as you see in the picture, on the panel. It was, I think, an engaging first step for our Snohomish STEM network, and I'm very much looking forward to that group working on behalf of kids in this county in the future. A little bit of district news. I'd like to thank the 50 residents who came to Penny Creek Elementary to learn more about and ask questions regarding the why and the how much behind the measures that are on the ballot February 13th. And I know that most folks there were interested deeply in why the costs are as they are for the high school that's planned, and that we were able to share with them that square footage construction cost is very comparable to other similar high school projects. And I'm delighted that Mr. Gunn and the architects and the cost estimators were able to put together not only data but visuals to help people understand why the cost of that project is very competitive with others. And thank you very, very much for being there, those of you who were there and able to help, and thank you to the team who put all that together. On January 29th, school office managers, office assistants, and department assistants participated in 3 professional development sessions. They were created based on employee survey results and input. The training was planned and implemented by our classified employees who serve on the district's Professional Development Council. The district has reached a milestone for Elementary 18. We've received the conditional use permit for the site. This is a land use permit that allows the school to be constructed and operated at that location. Elementary 18 is currently out to bid. Bids are due March 31st, and we're looking forward to that and sort of holding our breaths on the actual costs that the bids will contain. These are the school visits for the last month. Actually, a number of these are multiple visits. Hawthorne twice, Mill Creek twice, Whittier twice, Eisenhower twice, Everett High I think 3 times, and Jackson High twice. So it's really been a very busy month and a delightful month at that. Thank you all. Sorry that I went a little bit over time this time. Working on a good average though.
That's okay. A lot of good news to share, and I love seeing all the success that our students are having in their clubs and activities and sports. And as a matter of fact, I was driving home this afternoon and I got a text from my son saying he was going to knitting club at Everett High. My 16-year-old boy. So I need to just double check and make sure there really is a knitting club at Everett High, I think. Okay, I get the thumbs up. I wasn't sure if it's code for something else. He continues to surprise me. Anyhow, that takes us to section 10.0, strategic progress monitoring. And tonight we get an update on the strategic plan, our mid-year progress report, and I believe Mr. Gunn is going to be presenting.
And now you know you're going to have to bring the first products from the knitting club.
I was wondering what
Yeah.
he might choose, actually.
Yeah.
I've yet to see the needles, though, so I'm still a little...
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. Tonight I have, along with 8 other members of the Superintendent's Cabinet, the pleasure of presenting to you highlights of the work done so far this year to implement our district's strategic plan. This strategic plan, originally approved by the board in 2011, has been modified annually since then as needed and is focused on educating, preparing, and inspiring our students for their future. The strategic links, as usual, are indicated on the second slide of the presentation. Our objective tonight, again, is to provide an overview of the actual report itself. The report is attached to board docs. It's about 47 pages, and you'll notice a few differences in the report this year. Not the presentation necessarily, but the report itself has more graphics in it than we've ever had, and they relate to a lot of the strategic topics and conversations we've been having recently, especially around the bond and levy, but other issues as well. And then also we've included at the end of the report in appendix number 1 the vision story from 2030, which is from the original the 2-day visioning event that we held in 2010. So you might find it interesting at some point to read through that and then think about how our progress so far over the last 7 or 8 years has aligned fairly well with that vision that we developed in 2010. This is the 60-month planning horizon. Part of the reason that we show this every time that we do this, which is twice a year, so we've shown this quite a few times, is to really help provide in the record for community members especially that look at this presentation and this material an understanding of how we plan for the long term and how this is just 1 year and a multi-year implementation process. It shows the strategic plan, the 5 strategic priority areas, core values around the edge of the circle, 19 goals, 36 key performance outcomes, and then importantly, a dashed line that shows above the line is the work at a strategic level for the board to define the ends, and then underneath it for the superintendent and staff to carry out the work. And then this represents the 12-month planning horizon. It goes into more detail what we do in the course of every year, which is to update our strategic plan. The board resets goals and annual meeting plan based around that, the strategic plan. Performance goals are set for the superintendent. And then the staff of the district develop, along with the superintendent, the annual operating plan, which is the action items and key performance indicators for that annual plan. And then again, identify key performance indicators on how we're going to measure our performance. That annual operating plan is then developed into work plans at schools for school improvement plans and then departmental work plans that really carries out that work of the annual operating plan throughout the district over the course of the year. I've just given you a fairly brief overview of the 60 and 12-month planning horizons. The major accomplishments in 5 strategic priority areas will be covered in turn. Through the 5 strategic priority areas, as I mentioned, I'll have, I think, 8 other cabinet members up here in turn along with me doing this. This presentation is, well, some additions, and I'm sorry, hold on. I wanted to, and I do this every time about this point in the presentation, to recognize that the work that we're presenting, both in the report and the presentation, are not only the work of the cabinet and yourselves and the superintendent, but also the students and staff of the district, the parents, community groups, and service or support organizations throughout the district. So it's really kind of a report and a summary of the work of the entire system supporting us for the first half of this year. So with that, I would ask Dr. Joyce Stewart to come up and lead us off with the overview and the work in Strategic Priority Area 1. Thanks.
So good evening. Dr. Lancaster, Mr. Fleckenstein, and Mr. Beckley and I, we're all going to share the next several slides, and we're excited to be able to share the work. So you're going to recognize a lot of the topics that we're going to be sharing, but we're only going to share what is the new work in these topic areas. So you definitely recognize the topic of attendance, a huge challenge in our district and throughout the country. So what's new is most state departments of education have been focusing on attendance and really chronic attendance issues. So in Washington, if a student misses 10 or more school days, which amounts to 18 or more days in a school year, or 2 days a month for any reason, they are considered chronically absent. So the new work in this area, if you look at this slide, you will see that in the past when we gave you reports, we mostly focused on monitoring excused and unexcused absences. Now we are raising the awareness that an absent is an absence, and the effects of not attending school, and I've listed 3 main bullets there. So what's new, as you can see, we put some reports on the slide. We are sending home district-wide monthly, we are sending district-wide monthly attendance reports to schools for the first time. We usually monitor this yearly. We are now doing it month by month, and this goes into their principal's packet. In addition, we are sending home progress reports, attendance progress reports to parents. And we sent one home around mid-December, and we are planning to send one home in the spring. We got feedback from our parents, some of it was surprising to them, but some of the notes from them indicate that they were surprised too at the number of days their kids are missing. And one mom, actually, one of our employees actually said, my kids wanted to go on this skiing trip, and I said, nope, not this spring. So anyway, we are going to make some adjustments, though, based on feedback we got from some parents. So schools are working more closely with families and implementing practices that have been identified as ways of having a positive impact on getting kids to attend school. And we know that the best way is what we've heard Eric Jensen say time after time, and that's just to make school the very best part of each student's day. And truly, that's by engaging kids at high levels. So there are 2 examples here of the reports that the schools get, and then also, or one example of that and one example of the progress report. So again, this is not a new topic, our partnership with Seymour, but what's new in this area is that we expanded therapists at Madison, Lowell, and Garfield, because remember, Seymour is interested in making sure all the appointments are full. So they're monitoring to make sure that those appointments are full. And if those 3 schools can keep them full, they're interested in expanding that to the other elementaries. And then what's really new is that we are providing a new resource, a new tool for our school administrators. So, for example, students who don't qualify for Seymour services, or if there isn't a therapist there, they will have someone on call. So if a principal needs, if this isn't quite a 911, but they need support with some of these areas, especially in the area of suicide, that they will have a person available to come out to our schools and support our administrators and students, even if they don't qualify. This is a big, big win and a need from our administrators. So I'm going to ask Larry now to talk about the next slide.
Well, in Everett Public Schools, you know that our focus is to get our students college, career, and life ready. And over the last several years, the work that we've done on 21st century skills and the 5 C's you see in front of you and the growth mindset, to instill these critical skills in our students to achieve that end goal. The new portion that you have not seen quite yet is our work to then work with a collaboration with our teachers and our district staff to infuse this and communicate it to our families through the annual progress reports or report cards. And what you see on the screen there is an example of snapshots of those indicators, descriptors for the 21st century skills that are included now on our progress reports for just now the first semester. That'll be coming out shortly to families. But also you can see how those 21st century skills are communicated to families on the screen. And as a parent of a child in Everett Public Schools, I'll just hold up for you my daughter's report card from U Ridge Elementary School and kind of show you right here where those 21st century indicators come into the report. So anyway, these will be given home to families shortly and continue to communicate the work we're doing for our kids in the 21st century skills. The school board has sat in special presentations around social emotional well-being and social emotional health and the work that our district is doing to meet the needs of students holistically for success in our schools. One of the new things that we are working on and is a priority for us is the integration of all the work that we're doing to support the whole child. And the multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS, is that overarching umbrella that includes those elements of social emotional learning that we're engaged in the district, positive behavior intervention and supports, PBIS, and the academic supports, tiered supports for intervention that our schools are working on. So the work that you see in this particular slide is the development of that framework to then use this as a communication tool for our families as we're re-envisioning and revising our student rights and responsibilities to be more of a collaborative and communicative tool with families as opposed to a list of rules and expectations to create that real partnership that a support model really needs. And now I'd like to have Joyce come on back up.
So we have 2 instructional technology facilitators supporting our teachers by helping them use the devices to access authentic learning experiences. So what does that mean? So they are assisting, if you were to follow the one at Camlin at Everett High School and then Jennifer at Sequoia and then our elementaries, you would see them assisting with integrating their technology into our current units. They spend a lot of time modeling lessons, leading professional development, and then introducing new resources and tools. They also keep in very close contact with Jeff Utek so that their work is aligned to the new work that Jeff is doing with the Cascade, Jackson High School teachers and I, and 3 of our elementaries. So this morning, if you would have been here at 7:30, you would have seen the 2 instructional facilitators and about 5 teachers from Sequoia High School and Everett High School on a panel, and they were talking to the math teachers who were here today during the training and talk about what were the successes this year, what were their fears, and overall, it was so touching. Yesterday when they started, my phone was just blowing up from teachers saying, thank you so much, because this has really helped reduce my stress, just hearing from my colleagues. So it was so well done that we taped it this morning, but these are 2 really valuable employees who are making a difference in our schools. And then, okay, this next one. Oh, I'm excited to talk about this one. So anyway, this is the 2nd year that we had our administrators host our school-based board breakfast conversations. And one of the reasons I'm really excited about this is before we started these this year, we really thought about what's the purpose and what's the purpose and the outcome by asking at the end of this, what is it that we want, the board members would want out of these conversations? So we took a look at what's your work, what's your major work this year, and we said, all right, it's related to the bond and levy. So we want to get out there and we want to talk about our celebrations, but we also want to talk about what are district opportunities. So we felt we met that, our opinion is that we met our outcome, and we really believe that we got some great information, just not from their input, but they also learned a lot about our celebrations. So we are very pleased, but we would just say that next year, again, it's important to look at that purpose, and the setting might change based on your work. So you might not be doing a breakfast conversation, but again, looking at your work, we hope to align it again to the way we did this year. Okay, Dr. Lancaster.
So this slide is about expanding our participation in family and community engagement events. Again, none of these things are new, but there are new twists on them. The picture in the upper right is our natural leader cadre. These are the new people who have been trained to train all of our natural leader volunteers, and they're very excited about the work. Additionally, we've expanded natural leaders to Jackson High, Monroe, and Jefferson Elementary Schools, so 3 new schools this year. The picture below that shows a PTA partnership, and this was done to promote summer reading. The PTA wanted to play a part in how they could inspire students to read over the summer. So Monroe hosted 3 events over the summer to help kids check out books and make it a fun gathering place for families. We did host our second Native American community conversation, and while it was a small group, we did accidentally schedule it on a Seahawk Monday Night Football night. They were very committed to portraying Native Americans in a modern way and helping us do that. So we have a subgroup of that committee who's continuing some work for looking for our next student and family event they want to host. And then finally, our youth development program has traditionally been for our high school students, but this year we have partnered with that organization to do a middle school program that's designed for our parents and students of African American descent. And the first 2 sessions have been very well received by the parents. Next up, we have Brian Beckley.
So some of our new work, one of our goals this year was to create and launch a public-facing data dashboard to share our district work and progress to the community. And on January 22nd, we went live with our district data dashboard through our district website. This is the welcome screen that users go to when they click that link. On that welcome screen, it provides an overview of the district, some overview information. You can also drill down with the drop-down menu to specific school information. And at the top, there are tabs illustrating our strategic priorities as a district with information and data points for each of those. This has been a collaborative effort with all of us here on Cabinet, working with our stakeholders. This was part of our conversation at the May board study session with input from you as well. And so just a real celebration coming together. We call this version 1.0 because as data becomes available, we will update this. This is a living document. We'll also be adding other data points as those become available. We want to add to those. So a real celebration and one we're excited to be able to offer for our community. We also, one of our goals continues to be the integrated technology plan. This is our goal was implementation of year 2. and specifically addressing accessibility and alignment to curricular requirements. So to that end, deploying the devices at Everett and Sequoia, about 1,800 devices, as well as the 300 at-home wireless hotspots for our students that do not have internet access at home. That continues to be a real celebration for our students that need that access at home to be able to have the accessibility they need to utilize the device to its full potential. And on our one-to-one elementary schools, Garfield, Lowell, and Monroe, having one cart per classroom was a huge infusion of Chromebooks and a real success as more technologies become available more readily for our students. There was more Chromebooks added at all elementaries, but one cart per classroom was our goal at those 3 elementaries, and we were able to reach that. The graphic also there is the Authentic Learning PD, which is going to be in a later slide. Dr. Skurt's going to talk a little bit about that. We included it here just to give you a sense of how much instructional staff was trained last year, how many are engaged this year, sort of how that fits with all instructional staff across the district and our progress towards that. One of our other goals is to expand staff capacity to use digital utilization for training for cloud collaboration. This I would attribute to all of our students. K-12 have Office 365 accounts. So you can see if you look at July, we had 10,000 active users. You go into October with Office 365 up to 70,000 users. The number of users accessing that on a daily basis. The students at our one-to-one high schools, Everett and Sequoia, have student district email, so that red line shows the use of Exchange in the cloud. You can also see the expansion of the OneDrive storage, which is, again, I think attributes to the fact that we have so many more users and teachers using it as for online collaboration. Another one of our goals is to expand our use of a digital platform for professional learning. We continue to use Atomic Learning as our digital platform, although it's changed its name to Who Knew It, which has been a little bit of a struggle of trying to direct staff to the new platform, but it is the same platform. One of the new things we've done this year is really trying to utilize this learning platform for our upgrades, such as our eSchool product upgrade, our elementary gradebook, including trainings for teachers to be able to go to that as a resource to learn digitally. You can see, especially at the beginning of the year, it's heavily accessed by our staff with the various tutorials. We continue to expand that. The last couple slides really are connected together, but utilization of a incident change and service, our customer service focus continues to be important to us as a district and management system for that. And you can see this slide speaks to the help desk work orders. This is the Scott Jenkins and his team looking at the number of work orders opened and closed. Part of our ability has been our increased staffing over the last couple of years to really meet the needs of the users. And that continues to be a goal of ours, continues to be a real celebration for the number of our ability to open and close work orders. This is our LMS, especially at the beginning of the year, our learning management system. The teachers really heavily utilize that, and it's something that we've moved away from relying on email to a more efficient, effective system of one case managing our service support. So again, tracking that as a success of a utilization of that to best meet the needs of our end user. So I think Joyce is back up. Oh, sorry, Sally.
Let's see here. Okay, so the saucers you guys have mentioned earlier, have just been exceptional this year. The new work in the saucers has been on reporting out the work of the high-performing teams. And to that end, 2 agenda tools were developed collaboratively with the Everett Education Association this year. The first is a unit planner designed to help teams build consistency and instructional outcomes, engaging practices and checks for understanding. The second form guides teams through the data disaggregation process, aligning next steps, practices, and interventions. Additionally, there is administrative feedback. Since administrators are not able to attend each team's meeting each week, communication is essential. The LIFT forms help with that communication, and here you can see the administrative feedback on the form that helps a team stay supported, focused, calibrated, and aligned as they communicate their school improvement work.
So we know that kindness and respect matter, and we started the year, the SLT started our year by launching a focus on customer service. So each school and department created customer service plans, and we had Terry Yankovich, who wrote the book Unleashing Excellence, speak to all of us. And then we know how it's important that not just the SLT receive this message, but also our frontline employees. So you heard Dr. Cohn earlier during his report talk about how on the 29th of January, we had the office assistants, the department's assistants, and our grounds and maintenance also hear from Terry, and they spent each a half day with us discussing this area and also some other topics too. So we continue this work throughout the year, and whenever we're in team meetings, revisit our plans.
Integrating equity into our work is important, as exemplified during October's Learning Improvement Day for all of the teachers. The sessions you see here focused on breaking down barriers to help all students succeed. They were among the highest rated, most well-attended sessions for both elementary and secondary. Developing relationships and increasing understanding of diverse perspectives was a clear priority for our teachers as they self-selected from a very impressive list of high-quality PD options that they had on that day. Strengthening the formal induction process. We varied our process in working towards that with the new teacher orientation this year. We utilized the less is more mantra as we gathered all of the departments responsible for this training and collaboratively looked to how we could integrate and prioritize our content. We worked to model the same best practices in our training that we expected teachers to use with our students. We capitalized on a teachable moment since the event occurred during the solar eclipse. The STEM department developed some high leverage science activities to allow the new staff to have this meaningful experience. As you can see from the pictures, the activities were engaging and collaborative and helped foster a sense of community as our new staff shared materials and bonded around the common experience. It was really quite a lot of fun.
So we are implementing a comprehensive professional development plan with a strong emphasis on technology. And if you look to the lower right, you will see our priority areas. And it's the plan itself is divided into 4 different areas. So the priority areas, maintenance, what is it we continually do every year? Institutes, what are some of our institutes, which we expanded this about 2 weeks ago. And then always choice offerings, which once a month we have a menu of professional development. So those are the different areas in the professional development plan. But the one I wanted to focus on tonight, you can see our #1 priority area is technology, authentic learning experiences. So you can see that's the schedule for this year. We have Cascade and Jackson attending 3 full days of training. And then we have Cedarwood, Jackson Elementary, and Whittier also attending 3 full days of training. Those are our new elementaries that will be getting Chromebook carts in the fall.
So continuous improvement is firmly embedded into the fabric of our district, and one of the challenges is keeping that fresh and new on a yearly basis. On the left, you see some of our new hires working together to build understanding of this process. We want them, when they show up to their buildings, to be ready to engage with their teams in a meaningful way, so it's very important we ground them thoroughly in that. On the right, you see work of the Mill Creek Elementary teachers, where they crosswalked the Charlotte Danielson teaching framework with the work of the high-performing teams or the continuous improvement document. That was served as a great way to renew, refresh, and sharpen teachers' understanding of high-performing teams and keeping it new and fresh each year.
Well, as Dr. Lancaster said, continuous improvement is a focus that we have for all of our staff in Everett Public Schools. And it takes a team of educators and support staff to make sure that our students are getting the help that they need to be successful. And so in that spirit of continuous improvement, we need to build the capacity of all of our instructional staff. And so this past August was our first summer institute just for our paraeducator staff, to give them the professional development and skills that they need to do the interventions and support work in the classroom to help close those achievement gaps with all of our students.
I'm excited to report that we have been awarded a $177,000 grant from the Professional Education Standards Board to it's Recruit Washington Teachers Bilingual Education Initiatives, and essentially it's a 2-year grant. This year is our planning grant, so we're almost halfway through the year, but we've done significant work with this group, Marysville School District, UW Bothell, and Everett Community College. The implementation will be in the fall, and it's intended to grow our own, that concept of growing our students in grades 11 and 12 into bilingual teachers, and then the hope is that they would mentor down into the elementary schools. So lots of exciting work yet ahead, but it'll be a journey, and my goal is to have a foundation with this consortium that is so great, even if we don't get grant dollars, that we just have to keep it going. So that's the goal. We continue our work with Western Washington University with the Secondary Educator for Equity and Diversity Seed Grant. This is our last year. We did not apply for a second year because there's some bugs to work out, unfortunately. We do have 13 participants currently this year, and 3 of those are doing their internships at Everett Public Schools. I have some hopeful news from Maria Timmons Flores, who has been our very good partner, where she's working with Western Washington University to advocate for maintaining the alternate route certification program as a program that's necessary to have, whether there's grants or not. And then we have initial meetings planned, an initial meeting planned with our identified staff who represent Hispanic, African American, Native American communities to gather input on recruitment strategies to solicit their ideas and support as we launch this concerted effort. So some ideas of identifying those folks in the community who'd be willing to be host families for when we get those student teachers to come to Washington State, and then better yet, when we're able to hire them, that they're willing to host them while they're transitioning from another state to Washington State. So again, a long journey, but one in which we're really excited about. We continue our Staff of Color community events, and they continue to gain popularity, and Gary and I are working diligently to get more community support for these so that it becomes more of a community-sponsored event rather than a district event, and we are continuing in those conversations. We've posted this week hard-to-fill positions, so special education and those in the STEM area, so we can get out early and get our strongest candidates. We're in the midst of recruitment, so we attended the Danforth, the University of Washington LEAD program, and then the Western Washington, and of those there was about 75 candidates. Most diverse groups were at Danforth and the University of Washington Bothell, so we're hopeful that we have some strong candidates. And then I'm currently in the early stages of a comprehensive review of our recruitment and retention efforts right now. What are we currently doing? Much of the work, particularly I'm going to focus first on leadership. There's a collaboration that occurs with human resources, teaching and learning, from the new administrator academy to onboarding to actual administrative intern training. So bringing some coherence to that work so that we can demonstrate to you the good work that we're doing, and there's a plan in place for folks. Should I not be here? Not that I'm planning on leaving, but getting the things together that for those who are following us behind, and that we can articulate that to the board. And then lastly, this is not new either, but we continue to make gains in the rollout of our 4-tier evaluations. This year, directors, librarians, and facilitators are piloting. I have a scheduled follow-up mid-year with these groups to hear feedback and make adjustments to those tools as we go through the process. The nurses developed their tool, and we were ready to launch in a pilot, but we've had a couple of hiccups along the way where we haven't been able to really get a nurse supervisor in place. However, I'm happy to report that we have identified a replacement, and she will be starting and transitioning into that role. She's currently on staff, but will take the leadership role here shortly. So hopefully we'll be on track. I'd like to just share a couple of anecdotal comments from those two groups that have been utilizing this evaluation forum, food nutrition and custodians. From one of our food and nutrition staff, they stated, "It has been a useful tool for staff to set and achieve their goals. Knowing how they can move through the tiers is helpful to them." And then from the custodians, it gives the employees an opportunity to set goals to improve in areas they wish to perform at a higher standard. So it indeed is being well received, and adjustments are being made to make it more relevant to their work. And I'd like to invite Larry up.
Well, each and every day, parents drop their students off at school or get them on the school bus, and they trust that we're going to take care of them and make sure that they are safe. And it's our priority to ensure a safe learning environment in each of our schools. And to do that, we need to be prepared and ready to deal with any emergency that may arise. And so purposeful, prepared, practice makes perfect. That's an alliteration. So as you can see, we take great pride in making sure that our schools are on top of their drills and making sure that their students know what to do in case of an emergency. And as you can see, through December so far, we have 100% of our schools meeting their drill requirements, and they're making sure our kids are ready and prepared should the need arise.
All right, safety and security construction projects funded by the 2016 capital levy are underway. We installed new key card access and video intercom systems in a pilot form at Hawthorne Elementary and Silver Firs. This summer, we plan to install card key access systems and the video intercom systems at a number of other schools listed on the screen: Sequoia, Cedarwood, Jackson Elementary, Emerson, Garfield, Jefferson, and Whittier. That will roll out those systems that were piloted at the two schools already. And also this summer, we will revisit the idea of doing the full-fledged safety and security upgrades that are at Cedarwood Elementary School that will receive the card key access system, video intercom system, remodel of the office area to route visitors in through what is currently the principal's office. That will become the new entry vestibule, and that will mean a remodel of the entire office, front office area. And I have a site, actually a floor plan coming up in the next presentation. I'll go over it in a little bit more detail for you. And also some fencing that will be installed. Safety and security, from an operational standpoint, there's a lot on that slide. I'll just cover a few of the highlights. We continue to use the Emergency Operations Center here at the back of the room and the call center across the hall in one of the small conference rooms to practice for that someday event where we might need to deal with some kind of an issue out in the schools, or a reunification process at the stadium. We continue also to provide professional development both for our staff as well as a couple of our other partners, including Everett Community College and the Red Cross. They're actually working with us to, in times of need where they could come in and help us man our call center or do other work for us. And Everett Community College is looking at possibly using a system like ours or even our help in the event that they have to have reunification. Video cameras, we're continuing to, well, actually we're using those in our schools, and we're considering installing more at our high schools and one of our middle schools, I think, fairly soon. Safety data system, by the way, that's an online program where we store information about hazardous materials that are in our schools, various information that we're required to store at each of our sites, and it's available online as well as hard copy at our schools now. 911 merger, this is an example of an outside group that is, I mentioned a lot of the work that we're doing is by our partnership groups. The Snowpack and Snowcom, based out of Everett and Mount Lake Terrace respectively, merged as of January 1st to form Snohomish County 911, which will help eliminate the gaps in the systems between the two, and also some delay times that they were experiencing when they would transfer calls. So that has been a tremendous help for our organization, because now we're not divided by two different call centers. Radios, we are purchasing radios for all of our, well, for the schools that haven't gotten new ones recently, and also for some of our support departments like the maintenance crew, so that all the radios we have in the district will be compatible with each other. Right now they're not. And some of them are fairly old. And then we mentioned the last major bullet there indicates some of the other partners. Certainly Mary Schoenfeld, you all know her, and she's great. A great resource for the local community as well as some of the other groups. And we are also, as we do every year, going through, just heading into the process to consider updates to our strategic plan and to fully develop our annual operating plan. Both of those we'll be bringing to you in June for your approval of the strategic plan and acceptance of the annual operating plan. The 2016 election that passed was for a capital bond and levy, and we're moving forward. The three big projects on those, we're actively underway on two of those in terms of getting really close to construction. The first one is the elementary number 18. We have obtained recently the conditional use permit. It was issued by Snohomish County. That's the big hurdle in terms of the permitting process. It's out to bid. We had the pre-bid meeting, I believe it was today or yesterday. There were, as I understand it, 3 general contractors and 5 or 6 subcontractors. Were really hoping for some good bids on that, as Dr. Cohn mentioned earlier. North Middle School, we will be going out for bid probably within the next month and a half. It has also, the City of Everett has issued the special property use permit for that project, and that's moving forward. And we are in the EdSpec development process for Woodside Elementary School. Those are the 3 big projects. We're also underway on a number of the other projects. The schedule that you see on the screen there shows a red vertical line about the second year in. That is to reflect where we are today on those projects. The next slide shows the projects that will come to fruition if the bond passes here in about a week and I guess it is exactly a week from today. So I won't go into too much on that, except that the big one is the new high school. There's also other projects for growth and career readiness. And I'll let Dr. Dana Riley-Black talk about those here in a few minutes. And now I'll hand it over to Jeff Moore.
Thank you very much. I think that we've spent a lot of time educating our community, so this slide is familiar to you in terms of our management of resources, and so I won't belabor a lot on that, but thank you for your support in all of our processes that contribute to that. And this is an entire district accomplishment when it comes to audits, when it comes to actually creating the CAFR. It's a lot of work that we put into it, and we're committed to strong fiscal stewardship. The second slide I want to talk about is another slide that you're incredibly familiar with, and I think we've all become very familiar with the complexity of the state funding structure and the complexity of the legislative outcome. We continue to use every ounce of energy to accurately communicate that, but I would just reflect back to decisions we made 2 years ago about the structure of the capital levy that allowed us to reestablish time that was lost with the 2014 bond and recreate a stable tax structure that historically has been in place for our district. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Scott.
Thank you. Let me just sneak up on you. So when we're talking about strategic relationships, it's always a good place to start with early learning. And our P3 leadership team is a good example of that cross-district, cross-community collaborations and connections. The theme here throughout early learning is expansion. So we've expanded our play and learn groups. This is our birth through 5-year-olds and their parents, where kids play and learn, and then the caretakers get to observe best practices around that playing and learning in context. This is our most recent partnership with the City of Mill Creek, so we're really proud of that. ECAP expansion, we moved from 240 to 280 students with the addition of a classroom at Silver Lake Elementary. Everett Ready, which you're familiar with, is funded by the Everett Public Schools Foundation, serving 120 students. That's also an increase that doubled in size and expanded to 12 classrooms. And this is, of course, all about ensuring a smooth transition to kindergarten for students with little to no previous preschool experience, mostly targeting English learners and their families in that preventative gap closing effort, and then building the skills while they're there. Continuing to support a high-quality kindergarten model. Some examples include STEM demonstration lessons, modeled writing lessons, integration of 21st century skills, and then ongoing professional learning and interdepartmental collaboration, particularly, again, with our EL department, our math department, and our social emotional learning, which, as you know, are the two lowest skills coming in as measured by the WAC Kids assessment, social emotional learning and early numeracy. When we talk about community investments, the $90,000 grant from Boeing we're particularly proud of. I think Dana's going to speak a little bit to that. Preparing each student for college, career, and life readiness is one of our #1 goals, and this is really about growing our navigation tools and processes, most of which you're familiar with there. We're proud and thankful for the EPSF scholarships and Rotary grant monies supporting post-secondary goal attainment, the continuing Naviance monitoring. You've heard throughout in several other areas about the social emotional learning supports. You heard earlier this fall about the second step curriculum expansion, the trauma informed practices grant that is at Cascade High School and Jackson Elementary School and Everett High School. And you've, of course, heard in Saucers, and we're really proud of the Panorama expansion, the surveys in all 26 schools. And we are piloting at 2 schools a student success platform that cross-references students' attendance, behavior, academics, and their social emotional learning progress. We're really proud about that. And then finally, post-secondary partnerships expanded to Edmonds Community College. We continue to enjoy strong relationships with UW-Bothell and an emerging partnership with WSU Everett. Hand it off to Dana.
Thanks. Career-connected learning relies greatly on partnerships with organizations and individuals. Notable are the volunteers that support both our robotics clubs and our career and technical student organizations. At next week's board session, we'll be exploring our career-connected learning programs, including our internships. And at that time, we'll share with you the community organizations that have agreed to host high school internships, including Providence, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, or NOAA, and the City of Mill Creek. Also of mention in this area is a partnership with Washington STEM. Washington STEM asked to partner with us in the development of career-connected learning communication materials, such as the diagram at the bottom of this slide. Strategic Relationships also has supported the development of our Emerging Career Pathways program. Both the Superintendent Strategic Advisory Council and the Career and Technical Education, or CTE, General Advisory Council advise the identification of the 4 career pathways that are currently on the bond. And then notable to the right side of this slide are the partnerships depicted throughout the strategic area number 5, the Everett PTSA and the Everett Public Schools Foundation are enduring throughout so much of our work. The Boeing Company and Peter mentioned our recent $90K award that is supporting mathematics and early learning education. I'll just end it there because we're over and hand it off to Mike.
Thank you very much to the entire cabinet. This concludes our presentation portion of the meeting. Drinking from a fire hose, kind of felt like.
Yes. Thank you. Actually, we've seen, I think, almost all this information at some point, but to collect it together in one presentation is certainly speaks to the magnitude of the work that you folks are doing. It's very impressive, and it's fun to sit here and look at the initiatives we have underway.
Thank you.
With that, I will open it up to questions to the directors and student representative.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
Because this came up at the Penny Creek meeting by a teacher who is a mom who's also a substitute teacher. So Mike, this comes to you, I believe. Okay. It also happened to my daughter, where substitutes get locked out of the classrooms because of the need for keys. With the new key card and my previous job where I could turn those off and turn them on based on who needed access, is that something that could help or is there a plan that could help our substitute teachers get immediate access if they're called in for the day? Somebody could turn on their key card at that school?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, when you say turn on at that school, I think it may take our maintenance department to turn it on.
Okay.
Or HR. Darcy Walker is here, but it can be turned on centrally. So.
Well, because what happened is, like, for my daughter's math, she had a test. The substitute did not have access to the classroom because could not get keys, so they had to take the test in the library where there were no calculators. So
the answer is yes.
Okay.
Well,
period.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Okay. It just might, the process will be worked out.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have a question?
You know, I'm always curious. A fantastic report, and it's very exciting to see what is going on. What are the things that are coming down the road that did not make this presentation that we should be aware of? And I know that's a loaded question.
I think about a year ago.
With the amount of time you've asked us to spend on this particular report, that really would expand the meeting substantially if all the folks answer that question. I'm a little concerned about that. Okay.
Director Wenta, do you have a more perhaps pointed question?
I'm
a particular
good.
area
Good.
of
Thank you.
operations? Or?
Yep.
You mentioned the need for, in our safety and security operation work, you mentioned the need for additional video cameras. When you talk about additional video cameras, what are we talking about? 1 or 2 or 3? Are we talking about 50 or 60 or 70?
Who knows what the future brings? My comment was directed at, I think, 3 or 4 per school.
Oh, per school. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a couple of questions. I was kind of curious on slide 9. We talk about the 21st century skills being added to the report cards now, and under each one of the C's, there's a couple bullet points. Where was that information derived from in terms of describing sort of what collaboration should look like or creativity or?
Do you want slide 9 now?
So again, we had a shared leadership team consisting of curriculum specialists, and Joanne Bedewick led that team's work for almost 2 years, along with many of our teachers from the elementary and secondary. So that's one of the reasons why it took so long to get to where we are today.
Yeah, that's kind of a large undertaking to try and define what those skills might look like in a classroom. And I imagine some of that comes from research and such from those individuals providing that input.
Correct.
Yeah. And then I just had on slide 7, you were talking about the absences. And, you know, I was talking to a friend this weekend about she's taking her girls out of school for a week to go on this kind of cool trip that they're going to do. And it just made me, I told her, you know, well, Washington State has changed their laws and now you have to report these things. And what I realized is I actually didn't have a lot of depth of knowledge on the topic as I started to tell her about it. But I was also curious about whether we track academic performance for excused versus unexcused absences. So I think the unexcused, it's pretty well known that leads to lower academic performance. And I guess really my more pointed question is, does excused absences lead to lower academic performance? And do we know that? And do we track it?
We can track it, but we have not tracked it with our schools or reported it out, but we can track it.
Okay, just curious. Anybody else have a question or a comment to share?
I do want to thank you for the 21st century skills rubrics that we've worked so hard on, and the reporting to the parents and how they're meeting their goals. Thank you so very much. And I'm sure Larry is very satisfied with what he sees with his daughter's report card, because I'm sure he's right on top of it.
Thank you, everyone, very much for the collaborative effort on this.
Thank you.
I believe with that, we are going to move to a 15-minute break, which means we will reconvene at 6:10.
I'm passing out plates, so we'll eat faster. And it's not even here. Yeah, you're the one that wants us to eat faster. And passing out plates and.
Okay, I think we're going to reconvene here. We are on section 11.0, information and discussion, and tonight, first off, we have a capital projects update by Mike Gunn.
Okay, good evening. Tonight we have a presentation on the capital projects program, and the two large topics that we'll cover tonight are really the 2016 capital bond and levy projects, as well as the, in a more brief form, we'll cover the 2018 capital bond projects. And as usual, we have the annual operating plan links. The objective, once again, is to provide an update on the status of recently completed, current, or upcoming capital projects, in particular the 2016 and 18 bond and levy projects. This is the schedule that I referred to and showed you earlier in the evening, the presentation we just finished. This is a schedule showing all of the 2016 capital bond and levy projects. There is a red vertical line just to the right of the beginning of 2018. That shows where we are today. And this schedule, the projects that we had indicated and when they would happen in terms of the design and permitting in blue versus the dark blue versus the light blue of construction, and then in the orange, dark blue is design and permitting, lighter orange is construction. We're staying pretty close to that schedule. So the projects, I'll cover them in a little bit more detail. Elementary school number 18 on January 3rd. Snohomish County hearing examiner conducted a conditional use permit hearing, and the conditional use permit itself was issued late last week. The value engineering and constructability reviews are completed for that project. The building permit has been applied for. And on January 23rd, you authorized a call for bids. Those are due on March 1st, and as I mentioned, the pre-bid meeting, I believe, was earlier today, and there were 3 general contractors, 5 or 6 subcontractors, and the project is on schedule with construction anticipated to begin in May and completed in the fall, actually, say midsummer, and ready for the fall of 2019. This is a site plan of that project. It also includes, as you know, the site plan for the future high school, at least in diagrammatic form. So the elementary school that you see there is the shape of the project that has been designed and is out to bid. The parts of this project that are going to be bid on and built as part of this project include the elementary school, the parking lot for the elementary, and just right along 180th Street here, there's another parking lot. It's actually, we considered that an overflow parking lot for the high school and the elementary school. That will be built. And then also the 2 driveways for the elementary school, one, both of them on 180th, and then the through street, which is actually a private driveway going all the way to the north up to 174th Street. All of that will be built as part of this project, along with the only play field or playground area that will be built as part of the elementary school project is just to the northwest of the elementary school. So you would consider that more of a playground rather than a athletic field for the elementary. Certainly, as soon as the high school gets built, there will be plenty of athletic fields on that site. Here are some elevations of the elementary school. 2-story classroom buildings and 1-story structure for the large gathering spaces in the building. And the materials that will be used are like a what was called a hardy plank. It's a cement cellulose pre-finished. Actually, it's not pre-finished. It's a prefabricated board. and then some metal siding as well as masonry. All of that providing the exterior finish. You've seen and heard about the floor plans a number of times, but I'll briefly review these. The classroom areas are 2-story. They're pods of 5, and then we have the gymnasium area on the east side of the property, along with the commons area, the office, and then the main office entrance area is on the southern side of the building. On the eastern side is where the buses will load and unload for the school, and that's where that entry will be. There will be kind of a semi-enclosed courtyard area facing west in the building. Then the second story is more of the same, with some of the 2-story spaces shown with the X's in them, and then the classroom areas. The boundary process for revising the elementary school boundaries is underway. Certainly the ballot bond proposition here coming up on February 13th will affect the boundary process, because it may well, and we are planning on it, including 36 elementary school permanent classrooms, which would shift this from a boundary process for a new elementary school to a district-wide boundary process, including K-3 class size reductions. We've been working with our facilitator of the process and our staff internally to figure out what that looks and feels like. The next meeting of the boundary committee is just after the election, so we should know more by then. And just a reminder, the process to redo the boundaries, we plan to be ready to present to you a recommendation basically before summer break, along with the superintendent's concurrence, or actually the superintendent will be providing the recommendation, we'll be providing it to him. We're anticipating not asking you to approve it until the fall, and that will be about a year before the school opens.
Question, will the elementary boundaries coincide with middle school boundaries and therefore high school boundaries as far as feeder patterns into the high schools, or don't they overlap at some point?
They do, and it's likely they will continue.
Okay. So when you start talking about the work that's going into the elementary boundaries, there is some overlap with consideration for where our middle schools are and where our high schools are and how those boundaries have to coincide.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome. Here are some pictures of the elementary school boundary committee. What we have going is it's a larger committee, one principal, 2 parents from each of the 9 South End elementary schools, along with some district support staff. This group is subdivided into 5 smaller work groups, and each time they meet, they all get together and work on these really large maps. So what you're seeing here are 4 of the 5 small groups working. And there's a lot of information they're dealing with. North Middle School, the city of Everett has issued the special use permit. It's actually the city of Everett's equivalent to Snohomish County's conditional use permit. So the big permits on both of those projects are behind us now. 10 portables have been ordered and will be delivered to the site, placed on the play fields adjacent to the buildings for use during the phased modernization process in support of the construction project. So the sequence will be that after we get the portables in place in the fall, when school starts, the students that go to school will show up and go to those portables. Instead of the building where they're in right now the contractor will build the new classroom building, the 2-story portion of it, along with the cafeteria and the office, and then we'll move back into that building and then tear down the building that is located on the western side of the property. It'll be a little bit more clear here when I show you the site plan. As with the new elementary school, number 18, this North Middle School project, the value engineering studies complete constructability review is nearing completion. The project will be bid in the spring. Construction will begin at the end of this school year, and completion of the new building areas will be completed in fall of 19, like the elementary school. Unlike the elementary school, though, the site work on this project will continue into that next school year. But we will be able to move the portables off the site at that time in the fall of 19. So here's the site plan. The play fields are shaded in the northern area here, along with the auxiliary gymnasium areas, central courtyard. The parking area here is where the students that will be in school here, along with the portables on the field, while the building component that's located in this general location will be torn down and the new building will be constructed beginning this summer. Here are some elevations. You may remember the coloring on this has changed from what was kind of a burnt reddish color to a grayish blue. And I think it's a definite change and improvement to this. And if you're interested, we have some samples that we can share with you at some point. But the materials on this project, again, are going to be masonry with metal siding and, again, that hardy plank board. This is a view of the interior courtyard. I believe it is looking towards the staff parking area to the, or the visitor parking area. So it's in the courtyard looking west towards the bay. And the floor plan is very similar in a sense to the elementary school, where we have two-story classroom areas and then one-story larger ceiling areas for the gymnasium and the commons area.
Which way would north be?
North would be towards the top of the slide. So
the buses will come in.
the buses will load over here where this arrow is right now, where they do now. So it'll be loading on the same street in the same direction facing south. So from that student perspective getting out of the bus, their entrance will be right here into the commons area. The office area is located here, and that's why this is the main visitor and parent or student drop-off areas along here. So that's where the main entrance to the school will be for visitors. This, again, the area to the south of the office area is a central interior courtyard, and then the gymnasium area up here with the associated locker rooms and performing arts areas over here. The second story, again, is a repeat of the first in terms of the classroom areas. Safety and security, I talked about this again in the previous presentation, and I don't think I need to go through this necessarily. In fact, this slide is virtually identical to the other one. Let's go into the floor plan. This is the floor plan for Cedarwood Elementary School. It is the same concept, though, that we'll be using at what we call the clone schools, Penny Creek, Mill Creek, and Cedarwood Elementary Schools in the following summers. So what this does in the area in red is the entry, now the secure entry vestibule. Right now it's the principal's office and I think a workroom that is next to the office area. So that will become the secure entry vestibule. This curvilinear shape here is the main reception desk, and then so all the areas in this yellow, kind of a faded yellow color, will be remodeled as part of this project. And then the way that we're going to keep visitors after the start of school, we're going to have this the campus locked up, and part of that will be that between the gymnasium building and the office building there will be a locked ornamental fence, and it's very similar to what's at Garfield Elementary School right now. There will also be the same kind of a fence between the gymnasium and the 4th and 5th grade classroom building to the south of that, or yeah, to the north of that. This is what that locked ornamental fence will look like. So now some recently completed projects, fire alarm panel replacement at Heatherwood Middle School and Penny Creek Elementary, synthetic turf fields at Jackson and Cascade High School. As you know, the one at the Memorial Stadium is underway right now. Flooring covering or floor cover replacement and painting in Hawthorne Elementary School is done. Gateway Middle School, we replaced the roofing and did some HVAC upgrades. And then also the LITS department and I think our staff have been busy managing the infrastructure improvements and the wireless access points to support the 1-to-1 student to computer ratio that was ruled out at Everett High School and Sequoia High School already. And then, of course, the stadium reader board has been installed last summer. Current and upcoming projects, 3 portable classrooms have been recently ordered and placed and are being prepared for use this year. 12 more have been ordered for use in the fall at various locations. This is in addition to what we're placing at North Middle School, which is 10. So we have ordered a lot of portables recently. We are in the final stages of determining whether we need to order a few more than that. It looks like we may order another 1 or 2 or possibly 3 right in there, in addition to the 12, and that should take care of all of our needs for next school year as well as the current year, as well as the phasing at North Middle School. Some other upcoming projects. This summer, Sequoia High School, we're doing some controls upgrades and replacing the cooling tower. Jackson Elementary fire alarm upgrades, Mill Creek flooring and roofing replacement. Everett High School main building HVAC rooftop units are being replaced, and controls upgrade at that site, and then chiller replacement at Eisenhower. So a lot of heating, HVAC, and controls upgrades projects coming. We are also upgrading, again, in support of the upcoming 1-to-1 student-to-computer rollout, fiber optic upgrades at Cascade and Jackson, as well as wireless access points at those same 2 schools. The fiber optic upgrades are also going to be happening at all 5 middle schools. Replacements of the UPS units, uninterrupted power supply for all 26 schools. Purchasing property for the future high school on 174th, as you well know about, and then also future elementary school number 19. Synthetic turf next door at the baseball stadium, and then this coming summer, funded by, I believe it was the 16 bond, is the Everett High School Lincoln Field synthetic turf replacement. Now on to the 2018 capital bond proposal. In 3 general categories, we've placed those projects to be able to talk about them in simple ways. Growth, career pathways, and maintenance. The growth projects, new high school property for a future elementary school, as well as 36 additional classrooms for K-3 class size reduction, as well as growth at the elementary level. The middle category there, career pathways, is mostly to do with work at our existing and future high school to accommodate a career STEM pathway program at each of those schools. And you heard about that in the previous report, so I won't go through it in a lot of detail right now. And then also maintenance projects as usual, electrical systems upgrades, as well as, once again, HVAC system upgrades. Here's a list of all those projects. Certainly the biggest one, new comprehensive high school number 4. We are, by the way, underway with the early stages of the visioning process, which lead very quickly into the EdSpec process for that school. So we're also doing a lot of work to figure out how to man and manage the 2018 capital bond should it pass on the 13th. This is a schedule for the 2018 capital bond projects, and once again you can see a vertical line, a red line, just to the right of the beginning of 2018, and that shows where we are now. And so we plan, over the course of these 2016 and the 2018 capital bond and levy schedules to kind of be able to track progress that way. new comprehensive high school is on that 2018 bond, and I've already covered that with you. The couple points to mention, certainly a large parking area. We're going to need to probably end up putting another driveway for the high school access. This shape is diagrammatic only. We'll need to do a lot more design work before we know for sure what it would look like. And then you can see the fields there. At this point, we're anticipating in synthetic turf fields. Every time I mention that, there's a lot of conversation to go on about that, so I'm sure it'll be a topic for the future. But that is the intention, and we are still in the process of acquiring 3 of those properties needed for the field upgrades. This is a schedule for the new high school. Number 4 shows a 4-year completion. You can see where we are. It's just to the right of February 2018, and we're moving through this fairly quickly. I can tell you that we've revised the schedule a little bit from what this shows, but rest assured, we have not changed the completion date, fall of 2022. These are the career pathway programs, Cascade, well, the 3 existing high schools and the future high school number 4 designed programs to go into those schools, assisted in large part by the 2018 capital bond. So with that, we provided a summary of the current, the recent, current, and upcoming capital projects, both funded and unfunded, and are here able to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Directors, questions?
I do have a question regarding Everett Elementary School number 18.
Yes.
When the bond does pass next week, when we begin construction on elementary school number 18, will that also be modified to include those additional classrooms?
Yes.
At that time, it'll be
What sort of grayed out on the?
dashed lines.
There is a 4 classroom addition that we're going to be bidding as an alternate that is already out to bid.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it's a 2-story building and
Yes.
it has a dashed line. Is that 4 classrooms there or is that 8?
4 classrooms.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
First off, Mike, I'd like to say that there's a parent at Forest View that is very engaged in the boundary process and very pleased with how it's going. I've seen her twice now at the parent meetings, and, you know, a proud Forest View parent knows she's going to be relocated and is pleased with the process. So I just want to give that praise out. A question came up at the Penny Creek meeting again about security of portables that are at the building. Parent's child goes to Silver Lake where it's pretty fenced in to get into the building, but the portables are sort of off to the side. Penny Creek, they're off to the side. Mill Creek, they're in the back. But as we're doing this, how are we securing access to the portables and or lack of access to portables? From the property lines or something, I don't know.
Yes.
Is that something we're addressing?
That's a good question, and
Okay.
I am not sure how to respond to that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I don't know it's fine. Okay, that's fine. My last question is, because this has come up and it hasn't really been mentioned, how do we name elementary school 18? What is the oh, did I steal your question? What's the process for naming?
There is a policy and procedure that govern that, and we will be bringing to you. We actually had some conversation in-house about this today. There will be a committee formed, and they will be coming up with ultimately 3 recommendations to present to you, and you will be selecting the name of the school. And there are some parameters about suggestions, guidance, I guess you could call it, in the policy and procedure about the work of the committee, but ultimately it's the board's decision.
I like the names of the students came up with in their project from the
Oh, yeah, we
co-op.
put that letter in your Friday report, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really cute.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question around the 10 portables that are being installed at North. Are those a part of the North project cost, or are those part of the capital levy that was passed with all the portables in it, knowing that they're going to be relocated probably at other schools?
The latter.
Okay.
They will be relocated to Jackson High School
Okay.
over the next 3 or 4 years is the primary, or Cascade High School, but they both would be getting portables.
Okay. And then I had actually just a thought or a recommendation maybe. I was looking at slide number 4, and you have a graphic there on regarding the projects. And just on it's a very small thing, but I was looking at the left-hand side and it said levy projects and bond projects. And I guess I just don't want to confuse anyone that those levy projects are part of the type of levy we're passing right now. So something like capital levy projects. Even though it is part of the 2016,
Sure.
We all know that that was a capital levy. But if someone were to look at that and think that that's perhaps what a levy is going to pay for, it might be a little confusing. Small thing, but sometimes
Thank you. We will
people-
follow up on that. Thanks.
Director Wenta, did you have any?
Yeah, and I might need a refresher on this. I know this, I asked this question back in late 2015, early 2016. Can you remind me what the inflation factor is for the new high school for the next 3 years and what that equates to dollars?
It's about 4.5% a year. So on a construction project of $100 million, that would be 4.5 million.
Yeah.
And we're about twice that. So it's about
And-
$9 million a year.
And I would just offer this, and please push back. We have our timelines, but should we be so fortunate that this bond passes, I've always wondered why we don't beef up our organizational capacity during building times to do these projects perhaps sooner and save taxpayers money.
Yes, the 4 years that we show for the construction is the quickest it could be built, in my view, and it does represent a significant enhancement of our staffing. And,
Thank you.
And we're evaluating that right now.
My final question is this, and it was more to Director Mitchell's, I had a question on the naming policy. Has there been any consideration, and this might seem like a crazy idea, about renaming North Middle School? I know we had South Junior High that was later changed, but has that come up in conversation?
No.
I think there might be an opportunity there that may be worth exploring.
There is a policy in your group of policies that says the board is the entity that determines the names of schools. So if you want any work on that, that would be the way to do it.
Can I ask a question, just to clarify? Are you thinking beautiful new school, maybe new name to help with the, maybe a change in identity?
Possibly, yeah. And I think North gets lost. Certainly this was our experience with one of our YMCA's when we changed the name of it from Southeast to Mill Creek. Southeast didn't mean anything to anybody. North, I don't know, it probably meant something to someone when that was named. It seemed appropriate, as did South Junior High. But is there the opportunity to do exactly what you said and potentially look at rebranding the school?
Interesting.
Comments? Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gunn.
You're welcome.
I believe that brings us to 11.02, and Mr. Moore is going to give us a budget development update.
If you've had a chance to review presentation with all the work we've been doing on and understanding how intertwined our budget development is with legislative outcomes, with bond and levy forecasting. This is a brief presentation just to let you know kind of what we've been up to, but more importantly to focus on a couple of topics that I think have come from the board before. And the first one really is understanding the difference between developing a budget as a document and implementing the budget as a plan. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is just to reiterate the significant influences that will shape our budget in the future. We know that we've built up reserves, and so the work of the Fiscal Advisory Council has not been on defining cuts because we have safeguarded ourselves for a number of legislative outcomes. They just keep changing. The levy cliff became a levy cut that is significant. So we just want to emphasize that really influences what our investments might be next year. And the third one is talking about early hiring decisions in K-3, and to share with you kind of some information we shared with the Fiscal Advisory Council. So I'll move pretty quickly through that. We understand that, and one of the biggest challenges we've had is using data-driven decisions in our annual operating plan and strategic plan laid out by you and our community, as Mike spoke to. And then the state of the school reviews, which you've attended, where we can hear from the working on the ground level what some of the investment needs are for the future. And I think we had a conversation at Cabinet yesterday about how those needs, fortunately, coming out of the emergence, the list is shorter. Nevertheless, we've always been challenged with when saucers occur during the school year, the test data, that you can't really move up the saucers, but you also can't really move back the budget development of the document either. So how they're interlaced is sort of the focus of why I'm talking about that interdependency is important. So this was a crack at talking about how we develop a plan that's adaptable. By law, you set the appropriation for all expenditures by fund. And within that fund, we work within that total appropriation. When we work with the board, if you recall last year in the work session, we listed a number of priorities. And within that, if you remember, there's multiple tiers. The budget actually in a separate category, not allocated to the individuals, included a list of itemized expenditures. Had saucer outcomes driven a different outcome, or quite frankly, when you're making these sorts of plans in April and May, anything can happen between then and the start of school and during school that would affect and allow you to alter the plan to meet accommodating. So for our community, just to understand that the budget is a plan, and how we implement the plan is often dependent upon the prediction of resources. So the bottom half talks about, kind of on the left side, the Fiscal Advisory Council, the SLT, the board work session, saucer outcomes. We've been working on the AOP for next year, so those budget priorities are really based upon what we think the AOP will be and how we should cost those and how we prioritize them, as we did just last Friday in ILC, how we share that with the FAC. Now they bring back to you. Now the plan's in place, but we have those key milestones where we understand if enrollment came in 250 short, that would be a resource issue. And with a lower fund balance, we wouldn't be able to adapt as quickly. But that's that first milestone. Once we open school, we make sure that the kids show up in the way we thought they would show up. We then begin that 4-year fiscal outlook. We see how the year end closed. Fortunately, for the last several years, we've had higher ending fund balances. You'll remember back about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a lower fund balance, and that sets you off in the wrong direction in terms of keeping the bow up. We get the governor as a budget, and there'll be different moments in time when we as a cabinet sit down and say, and reassess, when to do those timings based upon those available resources. So knowing that at any point in time we're poised and ready to adapt to a different budget priority from the board is sort of the focus of this. The next part is really, I think, stating the obvious. The two most significant elements that will affect our budget for next year is the educational programs and operations levy. We all know that it funds 20% of what we do, and yet we talk in the community about those who think as if the state has relieved us of that demand. And in fact, with one of the constituents today, understanding that 1 out of every 5 individuals, 1/5 of our workforce would likely not be here if the levy didn't pass. And so the paramount nature of that to the vitalness of what we do each and every day is something that I think you know and we know that we're combating a little bit right now, the misunderstanding. And I think that we're doing an effective job of talking about that. But the bond is equally important because, as you know, with the bond, if the bond doesn't pass, the kids will come. And there will be transportation issues, whether we move them around. There will be an inability to access K-3 funding. There will be portable purchases that we'll have to do out of the general fund. And so the reliance will then shift back to the general fund. So it's important to know that those two elements and those decisions are important. And the second thing is the legislative session. If the legislature doesn't act to change the inequity and the inadequacy of the local levy formula, then that will be something that we can respond to with our fund balance, but it will mitigate a lot of concern if the legislature in this session at least creates a temporary fix and we can set our 2019 levy as projected with a stable tax rate moving forward. Those are really important. The other legislative objectives, of course, will be helpful. And so those two elements are really going to affect what we do. We've seen these slides before, but I think it's important always to show our public that the snapshot before the levy is this. We were an over-reliance on the local levies for staff. Then you flash forward, and we went down to the state and attended legislative meetings, but there's this general understanding that basic ed should cover about 90% of what we do and roughly 10%. So when it starts off with our 24% regionalization factor, it about hit the target. But as we begin to phase out and they lower that down to 18%, we're in a position of over-reliance or at least halfway back to where we were. So it's something we need to communicate over time. And of course, there's 3 biennial sessions before that happens and 3 short sessions. So it's important to keep that focus. We also know that we're communicating to our constituents that the $1.50 was too low and that it really hurts. It hurts Everett in the long run, and so we've structured that debt we celebrated earlier in a way that it produces some resources. And quite frankly, we're going to talk about this at your study session. If you add up everything we would like to do, that bottom line of remaining balance is insufficient, particularly when you get out to 2022-23. And we'll talk a little bit about that at our March work session. The final thing is really having to do with how to communicate K-3 class size reduction. And I think this was effective, and I think that Fiscal Advisory Council, along with Dr. Stewart and Dr. Scott, who attended, I was down in Olympia, but I think the outcome was this is an important message to get on our website. So we're working on it. This is not the Daniel version, if you talk it. This is the Jeff and staff version, but really starting out with the understanding that, as we always say, it's a student to teacher ratio. It's not a class size target of 17. And it includes the specialists, as you can see, the 4 specialists. And if you had exactly 544 students that came in even little groupings of 20 and 21, and it worked out mathematically, you could hit a ratio of 17-1. And down below requiring that it does not include the librarians. But we all know that a perfect world, it's not the way it happens. And we also know that those specialists provide something we commit to, and that's 180 minutes of planning time for our teachers. And then the other important factor is when people, just to keep saying, it's not by school, it's by groupings of school. So the K-3 average is for all grade levels within 11 non-poverty schools and 6 poverty schools, and that average, by the nature of it, means there's going to be schools with higher class sizes and schools with lower class sizes. So in a perfect world, we would look across and we can expect the average to be between 20 and 21 students in a classroom. So if you look at these 2 examples, you can see that larger schools and smaller schools have different dynamics. In the case of Jackson Elementary, we're hitting the class size target in poverty, and yet because of the few classrooms that exist, you can end up in the situation where you have two that are low and one grade that's at 23 in both classrooms and one grade that's in 21. So you see a little bit of an array. In a larger school like Forest View, if you don't have the space, it's driving class sizes today, and this is probably one of our highest class sizes around, up to 26 and 25 because we physically don't have the space to reduce them. So when you start looking at this, and I think this appealed to them too, it's a little easier at a Penny Creek or Forest View if you have the space to say, well, gee, we're up at 26, 25, let's add one classroom, and that brings us down to kind of our targeted average. But a smaller school like Jackson, when you have 22 or 23 and you want to lower it, you can't add another $110,000 unit and do that across the board. So there are going to be challenges, and at that point you say, we're going to have to stick with the 21 or 22. So these key messages about 21 are about being more realistic, because at that school that we looked at before, it's probably more realistic to consider that they're not going to come in even numbers. And at a ratio that we're trying to hit in terms of funding is 18.8. And if we don't have classrooms to add educators, then we can't lower that class size. And all this whirls into a specific dynamic about people seeing a lot of variability in how many kids are in a room. You can see that this would result in a class size average at that school of about 21.7. And if we go forward, thinking about how do we mitigate K-3 class size? Class size reduction is a ratio. It doesn't mean that reducing the number of kids in a classroom is the best instructional approach. And given the fact that we don't have classrooms to put folks in, and given the fact that the saucers have presented an undeniable need or request at elementary to add math specialists, it's a really logical and plausible approach to go out now and hire math specialists to bring down that ratio. So if you take that same school, you can see adding a math specialist in that school who will likely have to teach and go from room to room where the kids are will lower the student-teacher ratio. However, it will not reduce the number of students in the classroom. So communicating to this public that there are methods of using the ratio to benefit students, even though we don't have classrooms, this is a perfect example of that. So I think that Dr. Cohn has communicated at this point in time, this is the optimum hiring window. So we can't wait. Last year we were held back because the legislative outcomes didn't come until we were after the hiring season, and the difficulty of finding that number of math specialists became evident. So long and short of it is, at this point in time, we're looking to mitigate K-3 class size, access that K-3 funding. Unless the legislature delays it, if we don't bring down that ratio, then we won't get the funding. So it's a win-win situation to approach an instructional win by doing this at this point in time. Our next steps really are, we're going to go through the similar process to last year, and we're going to focus with our cycle through our fiscal advisory council, our leadership team, our cabinet, respond to the legislative session, work with you on March 13th, both on that big picture, but to apprise you of where we are, and flush out any alterations you want to make to the budget plan, knowing that if saucer outcomes come later that vary from what we've already seen, that we're ready to respond. So with that, that's a brief update for this evening. And we did talk about, it says July 3rd for first reading. I think that at Cabinet we discussed this is the type of year with a short session that we can actually accommodate moving that a little sooner. So June 19th would be the first reading, and July 3rd would be the adoption. With that, any questions?
Thank you. Directors, do you have any questions for Mr. Moore?
I have one. I don't want to go first if there are others.
Go ahead. They're getting organized.
Okay. It looks like, because during the saucers, there's been requests many years for math specialists. Is this now something that we're adding to the budget for next year, or have we already started playing? I'm assuming those are math specialists in the elementary schools where saucer after saucer, they've been asking for them. Is a plan to do this now? I don't know for next year.
The plan is to utilize K-3 funding that at this point in time by statute will go away to hire these math specialists to provide that instructional support and meet the intended use of that source of funding.
Okay, great, because I know that it's been a big request year after year after year at the saucer, so thank you.
I could have just said yes. But,
And as a follow-up question,
but
could we use, would there be other positions we could have used that funding for as well, but we're choosing to do math specialists?
I would leave that to the instructional team.
You could use it for classroom teachers or other positions that would qualify under the K3 ratio. Although
So there are some others.
Room.
You have to have
Yeah.
room for the teachers.
Right.
But I mean, we're choosing math specialists if we were in a situation where we felt like ELA needed more attention. Could we have done that coach-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you
okay.
wanted
So the
to-
math specialist is a choice we're making as a district to use those funds that way.
Those, for example, to Spanish teachers in Everett Elementary.
Right, okay, thank you.
However, I will point out that we do have a reading specialist currently and have always maintained
Well,
that.
yeah, that was a poor example because I knew that, so, sorry. But it was just, yeah, just
Foreign
for a
language, yeah.
variety of different types. Director Lassane or Director Wenta?
More just of a process. On slide 25, we show a board work session March 13th, right after the end of the legislative session, assuming that it ends. And I'm just wondering if we want to be somewhat flexible with that time. That's a pretty big presumption. Is it a fair statement?
I think that there's really strong consensus that it will end on time.
Really? Okay.
Primarily because it's an election year and they can't campaign while they're in session. And things seem to be moving fairly quickly. Some of the key issues, some of the corrections that occurred, the OSPI proposal seems to be running down both House and Senate lines, but they've removed the delay in levy because they take out the big rocks to, leverage the end result for what they need from each other.
Thank you.
But yes, we're prepared to move it. I'm here during spring break, others aren't, but,
So on the same lines about the math specialists, so you showed the calculations for how adding a math specialist can drive down the student-to-teacher ratio, especially for the more impoverished schools or the smaller schools. So are we planning on introducing math specialists to only these schools then, or is this an across the board?
across the board,
okay.
that's a good question. Yeah, it's across the board.
I have one other question. What is the advantage or disadvantage of split grade classrooms in trying to target a lower class size?
Well, the calculation allows you to keep class sizes low based on your targets and or your contract requirements, and it allows you to work toward hitting the state's ratios. And it's an offset to staffing costs and room availability. We don't do splits because we like to do splits. We do splits because of the financial and space pressures around staffing a building.
Are split classrooms something teachers don't prefer?
I've never heard it. Well, let me say this here.
Because I know there's some advantages to students, but.
We employ
but I
splits generally because we need to employ splits, not because it's something we want to do. In a perfect world, from my perspective, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have a split. However, I would also say that there are circumstances where blends of kids in various classes at certain grade levels and with certain teachers are something that are attractive to the teachers and the kids. And there are certain kinds of blended classrooms where you have a multi-age structure that are very attractive. That becomes much more difficult in a large-scale setting with standards that are very specific to a grade level. Frankly, if I could not ever have a split again, I would be perfectly happy. But that's not the world that we live in right now.
Thank you. Directors, any further questions?
By the way, I'd also have foreign language at each of the elementaries, at least one, and several other things, but the ability.
Your wish list is long.
Exactly. To have the space and to have the resources to do those things is challenging.
I think we're good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Moore. I believe that takes us to unfinished business, and tonight we have no unfinished business, which brings us to section 13.0, new business, and it looks like we have 3 policies to review, and Mr. Fleckenstein will lead us through that.
Well, good evening. Proposed revisions to Policy 3510, Associated Student Bodies, are provided tonight for the board's consideration. Over the summer, District Intern Scott Pease was asked to review the 3000 series of board policy and apply an equity lens in his examination. As a result of his review, the proposed policy includes updated language to comply with the revisions made to Washington Administrative Code 392-138, Finance Associated Student Body Monies. Revisions to this policy include additional language of our school's ASB budget development and board approval process, and adds guidelines on student fundraising for a private or non-associated student body fund purpose and the disbursement of such funds.
Hey, Larry, can you close?
Oh, sorry. Not sure why that popped up. Thank you. Proposed revisions to Policy 3510, Associated Student Bodies, have been reviewed by legal counsel and the Superintendent's Cabinet prior to tonight's meeting. So at the bottom of page 1 and on to page 2 are the primary revisions detailing the budgetary process that we go through here in the district, and then also the specific stipulations for those ASB fundraising activities that are not going to be associated with the student body fund, and clearly identifying how that will be identified and dispersed at the end of the activity.
Do any directors have questions for Mr. Fleckenstein?
Just for clarification, because it's been a while since I've seen terms of this nature put in a school policy. I have seen it before in other circumstance. The add-in on, and which do not bring dishonor to the district or its students.
Mm-hmm.
I've found that, give me an example, if you can.
So,
in a school environment.
Okay. So let's say that the fundraising or the fundraising practice were, for example, to promote an activity through our student conduct policies that would be prohibitive under our guidelines or state law. We would not, that is what that phrase indicates, as something that would be dishonorable to the district or its students. Could also potentially be a fundraising activity that would directly violate one of the core values of the district.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be fundraising. This is about their practices too, so they couldn't have an event that could dishonor. Is that correct, or is this all about fundraising?
This particular section is specific to fundraising activities.
Okay.
Because the policy itself is really related to the monies associated with student body funds, student bodies.
So then are you, I'm sorry, you finished? The very last paragraph about political campaigns, does that mean that they cannot use their money for any candidate or political campaigns, or the students may not endorse or work on, or what is, because I see the original one, but then it adds on activities cannot include, support, or oppose any political candidates or ballot measure. It seems a little bit redundant to the first paragraph. But I'm just wondering, is that they can't contribute or they can't participate in as a ASB? As individual students, they could. I was just curious. I'm not sure if they just have never been able to.
You mean the first sentence in the paragraph?
The first sentence and then the addition of the second sentence.
You want to do it or you want me to do it?
I think you should, sir, to be
They
specific.
may not engage in any political activities as an ASB. It's state funds, it's state property. What they do in their own time is up to them.
Okay.
But this is a clear prohibition.
Okay, thank you.
You don't get involved in any of that sort of thing.
Thank you.
And sometimes we, have to state it 2 and 3 times.
Yeah, and I do appreciate a little bit the support or opposition.
Okay. With no further questions, we will move policy 3510 to second reading, and that brings us to policy 5320.
All right.
Point 2. Is that really a point 2?
Yeah, it's a little bit out of the norm. Proposed revisions to policy 5320.2, illness, injury, and emergency leave, are provided tonight for the board's review and consideration. Proposed revisions are to comply with Initiative 1433, Washington State's new paid sick leave law. Revisions include reference to the RCWs and Washington administrative codes that have precipitated the proposed policy revision that you can see on page 1. I'll scroll down to show you that. And acknowledgement of compliance to all applicable state regulations. Proposed revisions to policy 5320.2, illness, injury, and emergency leave, have been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Directors, any questions? Okay, we'll move this one to second reading as well.
Proposed revisions to policy 6950, construction contractor bonds and insurance, are provided tonight to the board in relation to recent legislation, substitute Senate Bill 5301, which amended the bidder criteria for construction projects. In that amended criteria, before a contract is awarded, the bidder must submit a signed affidavit declaring that the bidder has not been found in willful violation of certain wage laws, as required by RCW 3904-350, and shall also comply with state and federal laws relating to non-discrimination in hiring. Additionally, proposed revisions to this policy recognizes that the board may grant the superintendent or designee authority to authorize change orders to the extent the board deems appropriate to facilitate the timely progress during construction projects. It also, in these revisions, requires the procuring agency to register the names of the bidders and the successful bidder with the Department of Enterprise Services. In addition, a revision from the title of construction contractor bonds and insurance is recommended to be updated and changed to public works contractor assurances and change orders. Proposed revisions for policy 6950, construction contractor bonds and insurance, have been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. I have a question. How is this different than what it was? Does it have to do primarily with the written statement, the written and sworn statement that they have to provide? And prior to that, we just assumed, or how did they prove that they were bonded and the things that it's asking them to write down now?
The change in legislation that led to these revisions primarily are about what you just described. The sworn affidavit that they, at the time of putting in their bid, have to declare that they have not violated any such laws. A declaration of good faith, basically, that they are on the what they're doing. This particular policy prior to tonight, you can see the strike through, the very first sentence. That's the only language that existed in this particular policy prior to tonight's meeting.
About that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay, so this is just to add protection and assurance and things that were previously taken for granted as happening, but potentially not always did.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay. Any further questions? We will move this one to second reading as well. Thank you very much for the overview. Dr. Cohn, we are moving to upcoming agenda items, section 14.0. What are our upcoming agenda items?
Well, item 14.1 is your special meeting on February 13. It's sort of a two-parter. There's a STEM CTE signature program review, an in-depth look at the work we're doing and where we're heading with that, and a career-connected learning session or element to the session as well. And that's the jobs, internship, externship-related project that we are intending to launch after working on it so long. I should say launch next year after working on it so long. Item 14.2 is a special meeting aimed at superintendent evaluation. It's your second formal meeting with me this year, and I want you to know that everybody in this room is working very hard to prepare for that. Item 14.3 is your next regular meeting. It's it's a special meeting. It's February 28, and it's actually an opportunity for you to observe while it's going on the parent digital learning training that Jeff Utek and company do. This was something that you requested this summer, and we've scheduled Jeff and this particular item so that it's easily accessible to you all. You do not need to bring a computer. You do not need to prepare. You just need to come and absorb and enjoy and, sort of revel in the work that Jeff does with our folks.
Is it by invitation, or is it open to the public?
It's to our parents. It's for our families.
For our families.
Our families.
But I mean, invitation to our families or advertised to our families? Can my husband attend is my question. As computers will be rolling out to Jackson, I'm just wondering how do people get invited?
Joyce, if you will.
Yes, it's open to families and students in grades 4 through 12 because we want the students with their parents present.
Yeah, because I just figure since Jackson's going to be getting the one-to-one next year, it might be nice if my daughter and husband were there.
Yes,
And is
because
it a
our
hands-on
activities are going to be,
evening?
pardon me?
Is it hands-on for both students and parents?
We're doing activities with the students and parents together. All in one room.
And I think there was also, there's an element with the question, how are we informing people? What's the audience to which we are promoting this?
We are asking principals to ensure that students and parents are attending. So I'm getting names from principals of students and parents who are attending. And Communications Department has also advertised it to families and In Touch. And principals are also advertising it.
In Touch or Blackboard?
I'd have to ask Communications.
Okay, so it's essentially advertised internally only?
Yes.
And only to specific schools or to all schools?
All schools.
All
It's
schools.
for students.
So no matter where you are in the process?
4 through 12,
And
yes.
do people sign up for it?
We are asking principals to give us the names of students who are planning to attend.
So the sign up goes through the principals?
Well, for specific students, yes.
Oh,
we want to ensure we have the room full. So that's why we're making sure that there are students and families there.
So you may bring your husband and daughter to a full room?
Yeah.
Well, and so my question is, there might be a few directors that want to participate as a family. And is that appropriate or inappropriate, given, I know that was not how this meeting was designed. It was for us to observe. But
that would be appropriate for you to participate with your children. You would get the most out of it by engaging with your child.
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Well, that's what I said. Let's wait for the superintendent to answer.
So directors without children won't get as much out of it?
They can play with another
As a
family.
parent, as a parent of a student in Everett Public Schools, you will get a lot out of it if you are there with your child. The other directors will find it very beneficial.
there might be students that need a parent for the night.
Do you
Second parent.
do you need to know how many will be coming from the board or
The
No.
family capacity.
No.
Okay, all right. Do they need to bring anything? I mean, those folks who are coming, not to worry. Not to worry.
Well, your children.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you, sorry.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. 14.4 is your regular meeting on March 6th. You are scheduled to receive a 21st century skills report and second reading on the policies you read tonight and a first reading on 2 additional policies, site acquisition and transitional bilingual instruction. Then you have a number of other items in general operating business, including your goals progress review and the January financial report, the wonderful asset preservation update, and possibly some recognitions, et cetera, et cetera. And that's it for upcoming agenda items.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to section 15.0, executive or closed session, and we do not have one this evening. So we move to section 16.0, adjournment, and that concludes the business scheduled to come before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. This meeting is adjourned.